In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make these adjustable wire rings. There will be further tutorials where we cover adding in beads, but for just this beginning one we're going to be doing that. So before I actually get started, I wanted to show you the technique on a bigger thread. So you take as much as you need and you fold it in half to begin. So this is called your lazy strand. This is attached to your board first, and then your working strand goes underneath and you find the halfway point. Okay, now you would start up here, but I'm only showing you for the purposes of you understanding. So on this side, what we do is we make what looks like a number 4 and tuck it into the side of your board if you want, so it's not going to go anywhere. And with the thread on the opposite side, what you do is you go under the lazy strand and through the hole that was just made, number 4, and then tighten into a knot. This is half, it's called a square knot, and this is half of it. You have to do both to complete it. So you go to the other side and you make what is a P shape. Some people call it a D shape, but with the thread there it looks like a P, so I'm calling it a P. And then we use the thread again, come back under the lazy, through the loop you just made, and again tighten, and that is one full square knot. Probably easier if I zoom in a bit for you. It's one full square knot for you. Going to do a number 4 again. Come in on the other side, under the lazy, through the loop, and tighten. If you ever forget where you are, you take this strand from underneath this top loop. So say, you know, someone knocks at the door, or I do a lot of jewellery making for people with chronic illnesses, so say you have to put it down because you're too tired and you have to come back to it later. Wherever this loop is, you take the strand underneath. Then I draw the P again, take the other strand underneath the lazy, through the new loop, and tighten. Very simple. And you just repeat that for the length that you want. So say you just wanted to turn this into a bracelet. Again, this is without beads. That is all you would do for the length that you want. So now we're going to look at doing it onto actual wire. So now we're going to make the wire macrame rings. Here are 2 examples. We're going to do them in the adjustable and without beads to show you to begin with. I will do future tutorials on the others. So what I suggest is having some T-bars. These are available to purchase. I'll put a link below, or you can make your own. I can do a tutorial on that if people so wish. Just comment below and let me know. I wouldn't go underneath a 1mm wire. I've tried 0.8, it's not strong enough. I personally prefer 1.25 for this design, but 1mm is also pretty good. It does hold. For your weaving wire, I use, this is 0.315. I have tried 0.25, which just isn't, it takes forever, it takes a lot of wraps, and after working that much can become quite brittle, so I don't use that. And 0.4 for those with dexterity issues, it's quite tough. The wire does have a lot of resistance, and even when I've been doing this for quite a while, I still struggle. So this is the wire that I prefer to use in this particular gauge, and it's the one I suggest. Even if you don't have any dexterity problems, as a beginner you don't really want to be put off because you know you haven't got your tension down yet and the loops are coming out different sizes and it just doesn't look very nice. That can knock your confidence and make you not want to do it. So just go for a smaller gauge, it's easier that way. To begin with, you need your ring mandrel. You kind of want to have a rough idea of what size you're going for. Yes, these are adjustable, but they need to be around the size that you're going to be going for, because obviously if you do want you know, the larger end and you're going to give it to someone who's, you know, an M, it's not going to work, and vice versa. You know, if someone, I've got quite big fingers from my illness, and if someone was to give me an adjustable one in these little sizes, it might just fit my pinky finger, but it's not going to fit any of the other ones. So just be aware of that. Have a rough idea in size. Now you could measure it, do the string, but personally I just prefer to go around the mandrel at first, and I always make sure to leave not a full inch, but it depends on the gauge of the wire you're using. For the 1mm, I'm not an inch, a centimetre, sorry. For 1mm I'd probably use, you know, 3/4 of a centimetre, but for 1.25 I'd probably leave a full centimetre. That's just something so that when I do the loops on either side, they've got that extra space. Otherwise, you know, you're dramatically reducing the size you want to do. I like to go for about an O. Let's show you there. So it's about an O here, and I'll go around and I'll actually go over, making sure I know that I've got enough for each loop, and there will be a space at the end. Okay, I make sure I cut it flush on both sides. So this one wasn't cut flush on the last time, so I'll cut that. Flush just means that it's got the flat side of the pliers. Obviously you don't want a jaggedy section for your making. I will do another tutorial, like I've already mentioned, on putting beads, because we're not going to be putting any beads on in this tutorial. This is just for you to learn. I'm actually going to put the loops on first, and I always put them the same side. Ooh. Done that one a bit too big. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm just going to straighten that back out. So I've got one loop, and this is where the T-bars sit in to hold it in place. Okay, and then I do a second one. You know, and if ever I don't do them good enough, you can go back in. I'm assuming if you're working with wire, you know how to do loops at this point, but if not, I have a course coming up in getting started with jewellery making, and we do cover making your own loops. Okay. If you're watching this in the future, it's probably already out, so just look below for the link. Okay. So I'm going to go in with that loop there. Straighten that out. Take my second T-bar and put that in. One good thing about the macrame boards is they are self-healing, so even though I put these holes in, it's not going to affect the board. Yeah, you'll still be able to see them, you know, a few days later they are still there, but they don't cause any problems for your work. So I really like these boards, and they're brilliant for all other forms of macrame. Obviously for this you need to put your T-bars in, but if you were making it out of string and you wanted to do a lot of different loops, and you need, you know, sections between them, you have to use T-bars anyway. So these boards are brilliant. This one's from Beadsmith. I think they actually own the patent on it, so when I got it, it said patent pending, but I think they own it now, so they're probably the only ones who have them. Okay, so for this length, and in my 0.315, obviously if I was using a 0.4 I wouldn't need as much, and if I was using a 0.25 I'd need a lot more. The gauges that you use affect how many wraps you need, how much space they take up. That's something to be aware of. Even the thickness of the wire you've used originally, so that's just something to be aware of before you start. And also, I'm going to say this now before I get started, I always use more. The reason for this is, again, because of dexterity issues. I need leverage in the wire. My grip can't handle, you know, little fiddly bits. That's too much for my fingers. It wears them out, and it can cause me pain. So if you have dexterity issues, use more wire than you're going to need, because the leverage that gives you means that you use less grip, which in itself means that you can make more, and usually wire is a few pennies a metre, so it's more than worth just losing a bit of wire and knowing that you can keep making. So for a length this size without beads, I would probably do 4 or 5 sets of the 9 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to go for 5 just to show you that I use that good bit extra. So I'm just cut this here, and straighten the wire out. I just had to do that off camera obviously because it's quite a thick length. So then I'm going to go in, and I sometimes just take it out of the T-bar to start with. That's not closed properly, I didn't notice that. I'll do that now while I remember. You want these as close as possible because you don't want the wire being able to slip through. And you thread the wire through. We're going to go exactly as the same as we did before when we need it halfway along. That's what we're going to do. So just get the wire the length that you need, pull it down. I like to squeeze it so that I can see exactly where halfway is. And then I put my T-bar back in. I've tried making it without, you know, these bars before. Does not work, messes it up. The loops never come out the same size. I've even tried just doing one at the top and not one at the bottom. Yeah, it's just a mess. If you ever want to put beads on here, you put them on before you make the loops. But again, I'll do that in a future tutorial. So I'm just going to clear my desk a little bit because we don't want all that in the way. And to start with, we're going to make that number 4 like I already showed you. Now this first knot, well, half a knot, we're actually going to do around the loop and onto the base. The reason being that we don't want it being able to move. Obviously if we just use this wire as it is, it would be able to slip, and we don't want, you know, when someone's wearing it, for the wire to be moving around. We want it static. And do that as tight as you can. When it's against the finger, you may need to adjust it slightly so that this bit doesn't scratch someone. But it depends entirely how it sits on the hand at the end. But I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, and then in the exact same way as I showed you before, you make the P on the other side, and with your opposite strand, opposite wire, go underneath the lacy and through the P. And now we are just on the main length of wire. So all you do is you keep going. Like, it's extremely simple at this point. The only bit that is slightly difficult is the bit where we take it back around the mandrel, because we might need to adjust it a little bit. But it is so simple. Ooh. Okay, if you make any mistakes, just unwrap them. So another thing I'll say is you make sure you take this wire, it goes over. I made the mistake last time, I went under without realising when it was over on this side. I just put the wire across. This wire should always be over it in the beginning. So then it's over there, and then under these two. Okay, and then pull. And it really is that simple, you just keep going. And like I say, if you get confused where you're at any point, just look at the loop that goes under. And you can make this in lots of different colours and styles. And like I say, you can mix up the gauges. I probably would never go above a 0.5 for your weaving wire. But if, you know, once you get more confident and assuming, you know, you're dexterity is capable, you know, go for those bigger gauges of weaving wire. You know, the patterns that they create, you know, they're really beautiful. The only one I wasn't a fan of was the 0.25, just the way it looked, because it was too thin. Okay, and if it goes up any point, just pull it back down. And you just keep on exactly like this for the length of whatever you're making. So I'll just fast forward it now. You can do make sure when you are weaving that you keep the same tension. I personally try and do it as tight as I can. It's also why I like to have a lot more wire, because it gives me that leverage. I can just pull a little bit here rather than having to be really tight there. And it keeps the loops at the same size all the way along. And this is where also I suggest having a good bit more length, because if you had, you know, small bits of wire at this point, you know, at this length, like I said before, all this extra wire becomes leverage for me. It means it's easier for me to pull the wire. It doesn't require as much grip and strength on my part. So from a dexterity point of view, it makes your life a lot easier. Be careful not to go around the T-bar itself. It's easily done again because you're having to negotiate all these different wires. If you're anything like me, you're easily confused. So just watch out for that. And again, go in and use your pliers if the loops are getting too difficult for you. Just nice and simple. I aim to try and get it as close to this loop as possible, but you don't have to. You can finish it where you're comfortable. Just do a few single wraps around rather than continuing with the square knot the whole way. Okay, now I'm going to stop there for now. So I'm going to take it out. Now, because we're going to wear this against the wrist, we want the loops going sideways and we want them to be perfectly diagonal and we want them completely closed. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to make sure that that's completely closed. I already know the other side is. And what I do with this wire here is I actually just wrap a couple of times around and then I go in and cut it with my flush cutters and try and get it as close to the area as I can. And then I take the other wire and I actually wrap the opposite way around, just over that one. So you're taking it to the loop itself, and then I actually go through the loop. I don't necessarily need to, but for extra security and making sure that the wrapping isn't going to slip, I want to make sure that it's completely closed like that, and then I go in on this side and flush cut it again. Now this is the part where I take my mandrel, and I actually like to try and bend these sections first. I try and go the way I did it originally, so because I can see that it was kinked that way, I try and wrap it back that way again. So just do that bit there first. I don't like to do it all in one go. I've tried that before and it just, these bits seem to stick out. Oh, sorry, I'm not in frame. These bits seem to stick out when I do it that way. So I go, you know, you can go at any point, but it helps to just make sure that you're wrapping around the size that you want. You know, go a bit smaller and then pull it down. Okay. So I did this to be about an O. So I need to actually tighten this a bit. So I'm going to go further up my mandrel. And I'm actually going to just push these over each other. Just moulding that wire using my fingers with heat. And then I pull it back down so that it goes on that O and it's perfectly round now, as you can see there. And that, for your basic macrame ring, is all you do. It's just important that for these loops they are completely closed, they sit against the skin and point them in the same direction. When I first did it, I quite liked the look of having one going one way, one going the other, but I actually had my sister wear it, and because obviously they sit on the joint, they don't sit properly and they can hurt the person wearing them, so don't do that. I think that's everything I need to tell you for this tutorial. The next one I will show you about adding beads and actually turning this from adjustable into a static ring. Thank you for watching.